The 12th Book of the Odysseys of Homer. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Phil Schempf. The 12th Book of the Odysseys of Homer. Translated by George Chapman. The Argument. He shows from hell his safe retreat To the isle Ææa, Circe's seat, And how he 'scaped the Sirens' calls, With the erring rocks and waters' falls That Scylla and Charybdis break, The sun stol'n herds, and his sad wreck Both of Ulysses' ship and men, His own head 'scaping scarce the pain. Another Argument. Mew. The rocks that err'd the Sirens' call, The sun's stol'n herd, the soldiers' fall. Our ship now past the straits of the ocean flood, She plow'd the broad sea's billows, and made good The isle Ææa, where the palace stands Of the early riser with the rosy hands, Act of Aurora, where she loves to dance, And where the sun doth his prime beams advance. When here arriv'd, we drew her up to land, And trod ourselves the re‐saluted sand, Found on the shore fit resting for the night, Slept, and expected the celestial light. Soon as the white and red mix'd finger'd dame Had gilt the mountains with her saffron flame, I sent my men to Circe's house before, To fetch deceas'd Elpenor to the shore. Straight swell'd the high banks with fell'd heaps of trees, And, full of tears, we did do exequies To our dead friend, whose corse consum'd with fire, And honour'd arms, whose sepulchre entire, And over that a column rais'd, his oar, Curiously carv'd, to his desire before, Upon the top of all his tomb we fix'd, Of all rites fit his funeral pile was mix'd. Nor was our safe ascent from hell conceal'd From Circe's knowledge, nor so soon reveal'd But she was with us, with her bread and food, And ruddy wine, brought by her sacred brood Of woods and fountains. In the midst she stood, And thus saluted us: "Unhappy men, that have, inform'd with all your senses, been In Pluto's dismal mansion, you shall die Twice now, where others, that mortality In her fair arms holds, shall but once decease. But eat and drink out all conceit of these, And this day dedicate to food and wine, The following night to sleep. When next shall shine the cheerful morning, You shall prove the seas. Your way and every act ye must address. My knowledge of their order shall design, Lest with your own bad counsels ye incline Events as bad against ye, and sustain, By sea and shore, the woful ends that reign In wilful actions." Thus did she advise, And for the time our fortunes were so wise To follow wise directions. All that day We sat and feasted. When his lower way The sun had enter'd, and the even the high, My friends slept on their gables. She and I, Led by her fair hand to place apart By her well sorted, did to sleep convert Our timid pow'rs. When all things Fate let fall In our affair she ask'd, I told her all. To which she answer'd: "These things thus took end, And now to those that I inform attend, Which you remembering, God himself shall be The blessed author of your memory. First to the Sirens ye shall come, that taint The minds of all men whom they can acquaint With their attractions. Whosoever shall, for want of knowledge mov'd, But hear the call of any Siren, He will so despise both wife and children, For their sorceries, that never home Turns his affection's stream, nor they Take joy in him, nor he in them. The Sirens will so soften with their song, Shrill, and in sensual appetite so strong, His loose affections, that he gives them heed. And then observe, they sit amidst a mead, And round about it runs a hedge or wall Of dead men's bones, their wither'd skins in all Hung all along upon it. And these men were such as they had fawn'd Into their fen, and then their skins Hung on their hedge of bones. Sail by them therefore thy companions beforehand, Causing to stop every ear with sweet soft wax, So close that none may hear a note of all Their charmings. Yet may you, if you affect it, Open ear allow to try their motion, But presume not so to trust your judgment, when your senses go so loose about you, but give straight command to all your men, to bind you foot and hand sure to the mast, that you may safe approve how strong in instigation to their love their rapting tunes are. If so much they move, that, spite of all your reason, your will stands to be enfranchis'd both of feet and hands, charge all your men before to slight your charge, and rest so far from fearing to enlarge, that much more sure they bind you. When your friends have outsail'd these, the danger that transcends rests not in any counsel to prevent, unless your own mind finds the tract and bent of that way that avoids it. I can say that in your course there lies a twofold way, the right of which your own, taught, present wit, and grace divine must prompt. In general yet let this inform you. Near these Sirens' shore move two steep rocks, at whose feet lie and roar the black sea's cruel billows. The blest Gods call them the Rovers. Their abhorr'd abodes no bird can pass, no, not the doves, whose fierce sire Jove so loves that they are said to bear ambrosia to him, can their rapine 'scape, but one of them falls ever to the rape of those sly rocks. Yet Jove another still adds to the rest, that so may ever fill the sacred number. Never ship could shun the nimble peril wing'd there, but did run with all her bulk, and bodies of her men, to utter ruin. For the seas retain not only their outrageous easture there, but fierce assistance of particular fear, and supernatural mischief. They expire, and those are whirlwinds of devouring fire whisking about still. The Argive ship alone, which bore the care of all men, got her gone, come from Areta. Yet perhaps even she had wrack'd at those rocks, if the Deity that lies by Jove's side had not lent her hand to their transmission, since the man that mann'd in chief that voyage, she in chief did love. Of these two spiteful rocks, the one doth shove Against the height of heav'n her pointed brow, a black cloud binds it round, and never show lends to the sharp point, not the clear blue sky lets ever view it, not the summer's eye, nor fervent autumn's. None that death could end could ever scale it, or, if up, descend, though 20 hands and feet he had for hold. A polish'd ice like glibness doth enfold the rock so round, whose midst a gloomy cell shrouds so far westward that it sees to hell. From this keep you as far, as from his bow An able young man can his shaft bestow. For here the wulling Scylla shrouds her face, that breathes a voice at all parts no more base Than are a newly kitten'd kitling's cries, herself a monster yet of boundless size, whose sight would nothing please a mortal's eyes, no, nor the eyes of any God, if he, whom naught should fright, fell foul on her, and she her full shape show'd. 12 foul feet bear about her ugly bulk, 6 huge long necks look out of her rank shoulders, every neck doth let a ghastly head out, every head 3 set, thick thrust together of abhorred teeth, and every tooth struck with a sable death. She lurks in midst of all her den, and streaks From out a ghastly whirlpool all her necks, where, gloating round her rock, to fish she falls, and up rush dolphins, dog fish, somewhiles whales, if got within her when her rapine feeds. For ever groaning Amphitrite breeds about her whirlpool an unmeasur'd store. No seaman ever boasted touch of shore That there touch'd with his ship, but still she fed On him and his, a man for every head, Spoiling his ship of. You shall then descry The other humbler rock, that moves so nigh Your dart may meet the distance. It receives A huge wild fig tree, curl'd with ample leaves, Beneath whose shade divine Charybdis sits, Supping the black deeps. Thrice a day her pitch she drinking all dry, and thrice a day again all up she belches, baneful to sustain. When she is drinking, dare not near her draught, for not the force of Neptune, if once caught, can force your freedom. Therefore, in your strife to 'scape Charybdis, labour all for life to row near Scylla, for she will but have for her 6 heads 6 men, and better save the rest than all make off'rings to the wave. This need she told me of my loss, when I desir'd to know, if that necessity, when I had 'scap'd Charybdis' outrages, my pow'rs Might not revenge, though not redress." She answer'd: "O unhappy! Art thou yet Enflam'd with war, and thirst to drink thy sweat, Not to the Gods give up both arms and will? She deathless is, and that immortal ill Grave, harsh, outrageous, not to be subdued, That men must suffer till they be renew'd. Nor lives there any virtue that can fly The vicious outrage of their cruelty. Shouldst thou put arms on, and approach the rock, I fear 6 more must expiate the shock. 6 heads 6 men ask still. Hoist sail and fly, And in thy flight aloud on Cratis cry, Great Scylla's mother, who expos'd to light The bane of men, and she will do such right To thy observance, that she down will tread Her daughter's rage, nor let her show a head. From thenceforth then, for ever past her care, Thou shalt ascend the island triangular, Where many oxen of the sun are fed, And fatted flocks. Of oxen 50 head In ev'ry herd feed, and their herds are 7, And of his fat flocks is their number even. Increase they yield not, for they never die. Their ev'ry shepherdess a Deity. Fair Phaethusa and Lampetia The lovely nymphs are that their guardians be, Who to the daylight's lofty going flame Had gracious birthright from the heav'nly Dame, Still young Neæra, who, brought forth and bred, Far off dismiss'd them, to see duly fed Their father's herds and flocks in Sicily. These herds and flocks if to the Deity Ye leave, as sacred things, untouch'd, and on go With all fit care of your home, alone, Though through some suff'rance, you yet safe shall land In wishéd Ithaca. But if impious hand You lay on those herds, to their hurts, I then Presage sure ruin to thy ship and men. If thou escap'st thyself, extending home Thy long'd for landing, thou shalt loaded come With store of losses, more exceeding late, And not consorted with a savéd mate." This said, the golden thron'd Aurora rose. She her way went, and I did mine dispose Up to my ship, weighed anchor, and away. When rev'rend Circe help'd us to convey Our vessel safe, by making well inclin'd A seaman's true companion, a fore wind, With which she fill'd our sails. When, fitting all Our arms close by us, I did sadly fall To grave relation what concern'd in fate My friends to know, and told 'em that the state Of our affair's success, which Circe had Presaged to me alone, must yet be made To one nor only too known, but to all, That since their lives and deaths were left to fall In their elections, they might life elect, And give what would preserve it fit effect. I first inform'd them, that we were to fly The heav'nly singing Sirens' harmony, And flow'r adorned meadows; and that I Had charge to hear their song, but fetter'd fast, In bands unfavour'd, to the erected mast; From whence, if I should pray, or use command To be enlarg'd, they should with much more band Contain my strugglings. This I simply told To each particular, nor would withhold What most enjoin'd mine own affection's stay, That theirs the rather might be taught t' obey. In mean time flew our ships, and straight we fetch'd The Sirens' isle. A spleenless wind so stretch'd Her wings to waft us, and so urg'd our keel. But having reach'd this isle, we could not feel The least grasp of it. It was stricken dead, And all the sea in prostrate slumber spread. The Sirens' devil charm'd all. Up then flew my friends to work, struck sail, Together drew, and under hatches stow'd them, Sat, and plied the polish'd oars, and did in curls divide The white head waters. My part then came on. A mighty waxen cake I set upon, Chopp'd it in fragments with my sword, and wrought With strong hand every piece, till all were soft. The great pow'r of the sun, in such a beam As then flew burning from his diadem, To liquefaction help'd us. Orderly I stopp'd their ears, and they as fair did ply My feet and hands with cords, and to the mast With other halsers made me soundly fast. Then took they seat, and forth our passage strook. The foamy sea beneath their labours shook. Row'd on, in reach of an erected voice, The Sirens soon took note, without our noise. tune those sweet accents that made charms so strong, And these learn'd numbers made the Sirens' song. Come here, thou worthy of a world of praise, That dost so high the Grecian glory raise. Ulysses, stay thy ship, and that song hear, That none pass'd ever but it bent his ear, But left him ravish'd, and instructed more By us, than any ever heard before. For we know all things whatsoever were In wide Troy labour'd; whatsoever there The Grecians and the Trojans both sustain'd By those high issues that the Gods ordain'd; And whatsoever all the earth can show To inform a knowledge of desert, we know. This they gave accent in the sweetest strain, That ever open'd an enamour'd vein; When my constrain'd heart needs would have mine ear Yet more delighted, forc'd way forth and hear. To which end I commanded with all sign Stern looks could make, for not a joint of mine Had pow'r to stir, my friends to rise And give my limbs free way. They freely striv'd to drive their ship still on, When, far from will to loose, Eurylochus and Perimedes rose To wrap me surer, and oppress'd me more With many a halser than had use before. When, rowing on without the reach of sound, My friends unstopp'd their ears, and me unbound, And that isle quite we quitted. But again fresh fears employ'd us. I beheld a main Of mighty billows, and a smoke ascend, A horrid murmur hearing. Every friend Astonish'd sat; from every hand his oar Fell quite forsaken; with the dismal roar Were all things there made echoes. Stone still stood Our ship itself, because the ghastly flood Took all men's motions from her in their own. I through the ship went, labouring up and down My friends' recover'd spirits. One by one I gave good words, and said, that well were known These ills to them before. I told them all, And that these could not prove more capital Than those the Cyclops block'd us up in. Yet my virtue, wit, and heav'nly help'd counsel set Their freedoms open. I could not believe But they remember'd it, and wish'd them give My equal care and means now equal trust. The strength they had for stirring up they must Rouse and extend, to try if Jove had laid His pow'rs and theirs up, and would add his aid To 'scape ev'n that death. In particular then I told our pilot, that past other men He most must bear firm spirits, since he sway'd The continent that all our spirits convey'd, In his whole guide of her. He saw there boil The fiery whirlpools, that to all our spoil Inclos'd a rock, without which he must steer, Or all our ruins stood concluded there. All heard me and obey'd, and little knew That, shunning that rock, 6 of them should rue The wrack another hid. For I conceal'd The heavy wounds, that would never be heal'd, To be by Scylla open'd; for their fear Would then have robb'd all of all care to steer, Or stir an oar, and made them hide beneath, When they and all had died an idle death. But then ev'n I forgot to shun the harm Circe forewarn'd, who will'd I should not arm, Nor show myself to Scylla, lest in vain I ventur'd life. Yet could not I contain, But arm'd at all parts, and 2 lances took Up to the fore deck went, and thence did look That rocky Scylla would have first appear'd, And taken my life with the friends I fear'd. From thence yet no place could afford her sight, Though through the dark rock mine eye threw her light, And ransack'd all ways. I then took a strait, That gave myself and some few more receit 'Twixt Scylla and Charybdis, whence we saw How horridly Charybdis' throat did draw The brackish sea up; which when all aboard She spit out again, never caldron saw'd With so much fervour, fed with all the store That could enrage it. All the rock did roar With troubled waters; round about the tops Of all the steep crags flew the foamy drops. But when her draught the sea and earth dissunder'd, The troubled bottoms turn'd up, and she thunder'd. Far under shore the swart sands naked lay, Whose whole stern sight the startled blood did fray From all our faces. And while we on her Our eyes bestow'd thus to our ruin's fear, 6 friends had Scylla snatch'd out of our keel, In whom most loss did force and virtue feel. When looking to my ship, and lending eye To see my friends' estates, Their heels turn'd high, and hands cast up, I might discern, and hear their calls to me for help, when now they were to try me in their last extremities, and, as an angler, med'cine for surprise of little fish sits pouring from the rocks, from out the crook'd horn of a full bred ox, and then with his long angle hoists them high up to the air, then slightly hurls them by, when helpless sprawling on the land they lie, so easily Scylla to her rock had wrapp'd my woful friends, and so unhelp'd, entrapp'd, struggling they lay beneath her violent rape, who in their tortures, desperate of escape, shriek as she tore, and up their hands to me still threw for sweet life. I did never see, in all my suff'rance ransacking the seas, a spectacle so full of miseries. Thus having fled these rocks, these cruel dames, Scylla, Charybdis, where the King of Flames hath off'rings burn'd to him, our ship put in the island, that from all the earth doth win the epithet, Faultless, where the broad of head, the famous oxen for the sun are fed, with many fat flocks of that high gone God. Set in my ship, mine ear reach'd, where we rode, the bellowing of oxen, and the bleat of fleecy sheep, that in my memory's seat put up the forms that late had been impress'd by dread Ææan Circe, and the best of souls and prophets, the blind Theban seer, the wise Tiresias, who was grave decreer of my return's whole means, of which this one in chief he urg'd, that I should always shun the island of the man delighting sun. When, sad at heart for our late loss, I pray'd my friends to hear fit counsel, though dismay'd with all ill fortunes, which was giv'n to me by Circe's and Tiresias' prophecy, that I should fly the isle, where was ador'd the comfort of the world, for ills abhorr'd were ambush'd for us there, and therefore will'd they should put off, and leave the isle. This kill'd their tender spirits, when Eurylochus a speech that vex'd me utter'd, answering thus: "Cruel Ulysses, since thy nerves abound in strength, the more spent, and no toils confound thy able limbs, as all beat out of steel, thou ablest us too, as unapt to feel the teeth of labour and the spoil of sleep, and therefore still wet waste us in the deep, nor let us land to eat, but madly now in night put forth, and leave firm land to strew the sea with errors. All the rabid flight of winds that ruin ships are bred in night. Who is it that can keep off cruel death, if suddenly should rush out the angry breath of Notus, or the eager spirited West, that cuff ships dead, and do the Gods their best, serve black night still with shore, meat, sleep, and ease, and offer to the morning for the seas?" This all the rest approv'd, and then knew I, past all doubt, the Devil did apply his slaught'rous works. Nor would they be withheld. I was but one, nor yielded, but compell'd. But all that might contain them I assay'd, a sacred oath on all their powers I laid, that if with herds or any richest flocks we chanc'd t' encounter, neither sheep nor ox we once should touch, nor, for that constant ill that follows folly, scorn advice, and kill, but quiet sit us down, and take such food as the immortal Circe had bestow'd. They swore all, this in all severest sort, and then we anchor'd in the winding port near a fresh river, where the long'd for shore they all flew out to, took in victuals store, and being full, thought of their friends, and wept their loss by Scylla, weeping till they slept. In night's third part, when stars began to stoop, the Cloud assembler put a tempest up. A boisterous spirit he gave it, drave out all his flocks of clouds, and let such darkness fall, that earth and seas, for fear, to hide were driven, for with his clouds he thrust out night from heaven. At morn we drew our ships into a cave, in which the Nymphs that Phœbus' cattle drave fair dancing rooms had, and their seats of state. I urg'd my friends then, that, to shun their fate, they would observe their oath, and take the food our ship afforded, nor attempt the blood of those fair herds and flocks, because they were the dreadful Gods that all could see and hear. They stood observant, and in that good mind had we been gone, but so adverse the wind stood to our passage, that we could not go. For one whole month perpetually did blow Impetuous Notus, not a breath's repair But his and Eurus' rul'd in all the air. As long yet as their ruddy wine and bread Stood out amongst them, so long not a head Of all those oxen fell in any strife Amongst those students for the gut and life. But when their victuals fail'd they fell to prey, Necessity compell'd them then to stray In rape of fish and fowl. Whatever came In reach of hand or hook, the belly's flame Afflicted to it. I then fell to pray'r, And, making to a close retreat repair, Free from both friends and winds, I wash'd my hands, And all the Gods besought, that held commands In liberal heav'n, to yield some mean to stay Their desp'rate hunger, and set up the way Of our return restrain'd. The Gods instead Of giving what I pray'd for, pow'r of deed, A deedless sleep did on my lids distil, For mean to work upon my friends their fill. For whiles I slept, there wak'd no mean to curb Their headstrong wants; which he that did disturb My rule in chief at all times, and was chief To all the rest in counsel to their grief, Knew well, and of my present absence took His fit advantage, and their iron strook At highest heat. For, feeling their desire In his own entrails, to allay the fire That famine blew in them, he thus gave way To that affection: "Hear what I say, Though words will staunch no hunger. Ev'ry death To us poor wretches that draw temporal breath You know is hateful; but, all know, to die The death of famine is a misery Past all death loathsome. Let us therefore take The chief of this fair herd, and off'rings make To all the deathless that in broad heav'n live, And in particular vow, if we arrive In natural Ithaca, to straight erect A temple to the haughty in aspect, Rich and magnificent, and all within Deck it with relics many and divine. If yet he stands incens'd, since we have slain His high brow'd herd, and therefore will sustain Desire to wrack our ship, he is but one, And all the other Gods, that we atone With our divine rites, will their suffrage give To our design'd return, and let us live. If not, and all take part, I rather crave To serve, with one sole death, the yawning wave, Than in a desert isle lie and sterve, And with one pin'd life many deaths observe." All cried, "He counsels nobly," and all speed Made to their resolute driving; for the feed Of those coal black, fair, broad brow'd, sun lov'd beeves Had place close by our ships. They took the leaves Of scents, most eminent; about their fall Stood round, and to the states celestial Made solemn vows; but other rites Their ship could not afford them. They did, therefore, strip The curl'd head oak of fresh young leaves, to make Supply of service for their barley cake; And on the sacredly enflam'd, for wine Pour'd purest water; all the parts divine Spitting and roasting; all the rites beside Orderly using. Then did light divide My low and upper lids. When my repair Made near my ship, I met the delicate air Their roast exhal'd. Out instantly I cried, and said: "O Jove, and all ye deified, Ye have oppress'd me with a cruel sleep, While ye conferr'd on me a loss as deep As death descends to themselves alone My rude men left ungovern'd, they have done A deed so impious, I stand well assur'd That you will not forgive though ye procur'd." Then flew Lampetia, with the ample robe, Up to her father, with the golden globe, Ambassadress to inform him that my men Had slain his oxen. Heart incensed then, He cried: "Revenge me, father, and the rest, Both ever living and for ever blest. Ulysses' impious men have drawn the blood Of those my oxen that it did me good To look on, walking all my starry round, And when I trod earth, all with meadows crown'd. Without your full amends I leave heav'n quite, Dis, and all the dead adorning with my light." The cloud herd answer'd: "Son, thou shalt be ours, And light those mortals in that mine of flow'rs. My red hot flash shall graze but on their ship, And eat it burning in the boiling deep." This by Calypso I was told, and she Inform'd it from the verger Mercury. Come to our ship, I chid, and told by name Each man how impiously he was to blame. But chiding got no peace, and beeves were slain. When straight the Gods forewent their following pain With dire ostents. The hides the flesh had lost Crept all before them, As the flesh did roast, it bellow'd like the ox itself alive. And yet my soldiers did their dead beeves drive Through all these prodigies in daily feasts. 6 days they banqueted, and slew fresh beasts. And when the 7th day Jove reduc'd the wind That all the month rag'd, and so in did bind Our ship and us, was turn'd and calm'd, and we Launch'd, put up masts, sails hois'd, and to sea. The island left so far, that land nowhere But only sea and sky had pow'r to appear. Jove fix'd a cloud above our ship, so black That all the sea it darken'd; yet from wrack She ran a good free time, till from the west Came Zephyr ruffling forth, and put his breast Out in a singing tempest, so most vast, It burst the gables that made sure our mast. Our masts came tumbling down, our cattle down Rush'd to the pump, and by our pilot's crown The main mast past his fall, pash'd all his skull. And all this wrack but one flaw made it full. Off from the stern the sternsman diving fell, And from his sinews flew his soul to hell. Together all this time Jove's thunder chid, and through the ship his lightning glid, Till it embrac'd her round. Her bulk was fill'd With nasty sulphur, and her men were kill'd, Tumbled to sea, like sea mews swum about, And there the date of their return was out. I toss'd from side to side still, till all broke Her ribs were with the storm, and she did choke With let in surges; for the mast torn down Tore her up piece meal, and for me to drown Left little undissolv'd. But to the mast There was a leather thong left, which I cast About it and the keel, and so sat toss'd With baneful weather, till the west had lost His stormy tyranny. And then arose The south, that bred me more abhorréd woes; For back again his blasts expell'd me quite On ravenous Charybdis. All that night I totter'd up and down, till light And I at Scylla's rock encounter'd, and the nigh Dreadful Charybdis. As I drave on these, I saw Charybdis supping up the seas, And had gone up together, if the tree That bore the wild figs had not rescued me. To which I leap'd, and left my keel, and high Chamb'ring upon it, did as closely imply My breast about it as a reremouse could. Yet might my feet on no stub fasten hold To ease my hands, the roots were crept so low Beneath the earth, and so aloft did grow The far spread arms, that, though good height I gat, I could not reach them. To the main bow flat I therefore still must cling, till up again She belch'd my mast, and after that amain My keel came tumbling. So at length it chanc'd to me, as to a judge that long advanc'd To judge a sort of hot young fellows' jars, At length time frees him from their civil wars, When glad he riseth, and to dinner goes. So time, at length, releas'd with joys my woes, And from Charybdis' mouth appear'd my keel; To which, my hand now loos'd, and now my heel, I all together with a huge noise dropp'd Just in her midst fell, where the mast was propp'd, And there rode off with owers of my hands. God and man's Father would not from her sands Let Scylla see me, for I then had died That bitter death that my poor friends supplied. 9 days at sea I hover'd. The 10th night in the isle Ogygia, where about the bright and right renown'd Calypso I was cast by pow'r of Deity, where I liv'd, embrac'd with love and feasts. But why should I relate those kind occurrents? I should iterate what I in part To your chaste queen and you so late imparted. And, for me to grow a talker over Of my tale again, were past my free Contentment to sustain. End of the 12th Book.